The Medici family is one of the most extraordinary and influential families in history. From their humble beginnings as bankers to becoming the de facto rulers of Florence and patrons of the Renaissance, the Medici family shaped not only the destiny of Florence but also the course of European history. Their power didn't come from military conquest or political dominance in the traditional sense, but rather through their incredible ability to manipulate finance, forge strategic alliances, and use their wealth to influence art and politics on a scale never seen before. It all began with Giovanni de' Medici, a banker born in 1360 in Florence. Though Giovanni wasn't born into a noble family, he recognized early that wealth was the key to power in Florence, a thriving city-state that was rapidly becoming the heart of Italian commerce. Giovanni started Medici Bank in 1397, and it quickly grew into one of the wealthiest and most influential banks in all of Europe. His financial prowess and the ability to navigate the complex political dynamics of Florence allowed him to form connections with Italy's most powerful families and political figures. But Giovanni didn't just want to be a wealthy merchant, he wanted his family to have lasting political influence. Giovanni's financial empire provided a stable foundation for his son, Cosimo de' Medici, to take the family's influence in Florence to the next level. When Giovanni died in 1429, Cosimo inherited not only his father's immense fortune, but also the intricate web of political alliances Giovanni had built. Cosimo de' Medici, known as Cosimo the Elder, realized that wealth alone wasn't enough to rule Florence. Control of political power was crucial. Though Cosimo did not take an official position in the government, he effectively became the de facto ruler of Florence. He achieved this by using his wealth to bribe, buy, and manipulate Florence's political leaders. Cosimo made sure that Florence's republican government was filled with individuals loyal to the Medici family, ensuring that his family controlled all major political decisions without holding any official titles. Cosimo's political strategy wasn't just about using force or intimidation. He was a master of subtlety, understanding that true power could often be achieved without the appearance of direct control. By the 1430s, Cosimo had secured control of Florence's banking, trade, and political systems without drawing much attention. He played the game of politics quietly and effectively, behind the scenes, solidifying the Medici family's status as the most powerful in the city. Cosimo's success was not just due to his wealth, but also his ability to use his fortune as a tool to manipulate political factions and ensure that his family's interests always prevailed. Yet Cosimo's power did not go unchallenged. Florence's political system was a republic, and Cosimo's rise to power drew the ire of rival families who did not want to see one family control everything. In 1433, Cosimo was briefly exiled from Florence by a political faction that feared his growing influence. However, the people of Florence loved Cosimo, and his exile was short-lived. Within a year, he was invited back to the city and regained his political and financial power. This brief exile marked the Medici family's resilience and their ability to survive political challenges. In a few short years, Cosimo restored his dominance and became the city's unofficial ruler, paving the way for the Medici family's enduring influence. But Cosimo's success was not just in politics, it was in culture. Cosimo realized early on that art could be used not just to beautify the city, but to consolidate power and make a lasting legacy. By the time he died in 1464, Cosimo had become one of the most important patrons of the Renaissance, commissioning works from some of the greatest artists and thinkers of the time. His patronage transformed Florence into the cultural capital of Europe. He supported artists such as Donatello, Fra Angelico, and Filippo Brunelleschi, all of whom created works that remain iconic today. Cosimo's understanding of the political power of art allowed the Medici family to control not just the politics of Florence, but the cultural output that defined an entire era. Under Cosimo's leadership, Florence became synonymous with the Renaissance, and the Medici family was at the heart of it all. By the time Lorenzo de' Medici, Cosimo's grandson, took over the family's leadership in 1469, the Medici family had already secured a dominant position in Florence. Lorenzo, often called Lorenzo the Magnificent, was not only a brilliant political leader but also a visionary patron of the arts. Lorenzo inherited his grandfather Cosimo's knack for subtly controlling political affairs, but he added a new dimension to the Medici legacy. He embraced art and culture to an even greater extent than Cosimo had. Lorenzo's court became a gathering place for the greatest artists, philosophers, and poets of the time, making Florence the intellectual and artistic center of Europe. One of Lorenzo's most significant contributions to Florence's cultural landscape was his support of artists like Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and Sandro Botticelli. Lorenzo wasn't just a benefactor. He understood that art had the power to change the way people thought, and in turn, the way they viewed power. He didn't simply commission works to beautify his city, he used art to affirm the Medici family's role as the definers of culture and guardians of the Renaissance. Lorenzo's patronage allowed artists to experiment and push boundaries, resulting in some of the greatest works in Western history, including Botticelli's The Birth of Venus and Michelangelo's Pieta. Lorenzo's political brilliance also helped ensure Florence's survival in a time of constant political strife. Although Lorenzo was technically just a merchant prince, he held immense political influence through his alliances and his role as an economic power broker. His ability to play the political game and form alliances with powerful families across Italy and Europe kept Florence independent, even when other city-states were under the control of foreign powers. In 1478, Lorenzo and his brother Giuliano survived the Pazzi conspiracy, an assassination attempt orchestrated by rival families. Despite the attack, Lorenzo's grip on power remained unshaken, and he continued to rule Florence with a cultural and political influence that no other family could rival. Lorenzo the Magnificent died in 1492, and with his passing, the Medici family faced its first major crisis. Without Lorenzo's political genius, the family began to lose its grip on Florence, leading to a brief exile of the Medici. Yet, despite these setbacks, the Medici proved to be resilient, returning to power by 1512, this time as Dukes of Florence rather than mere merchant princes. The Medici's power had evolved from bankers and merchants to royalty, and their influence would continue to shape Italy and Europe for centuries to come. The Medici family's influence did not end with Lorenzo the Magnificent. Through strategic marriages and alliances, the family extended its power far beyond the city-state of Florence. By 1532, the Medici family was granted the title of Dukes of Florence, marking a shift from being bankers and merchants to European royalty. This shift represented a new chapter in the Medici story, transforming them into political figures of immense influence not just in Florence, but across Europe. Under Giovanni de' Medici, Pope Leo X, the family's influence reached new heights. Pope Leo X was one of the most influential figures in both religious and political matters during the early 16th century. As Pope, Leo X expanded the Medici family's influence across Europe, and the Vatican itself became a source of immense wealth and political power. The Medici now had their hands in both church and state, shaping not only Florence but the entire Catholic Church. Their patronage continued, not just of art, but of political alliances and military strategies, securing their legacy as rulers in both secular and religious realms. However, not all of the Medici family's reigns were as smooth as Leo X's papacy. In 1527, Rome was sacked by the imperial army, and Clement VII, another Medici pope, was forced into exile. The family's political hold weakened, and their position in Florence became precarious once again. But the Medici resilience showed itself once more when, in 1530, Clement VII regained control of Florence, and by 1532, the Medici were granted the title of Dukes of Florence. This cemented their rule not just over Florence, but over much of Italy. The Medici dynasty, which had begun as bankers, was now firmly entrenched in both church and royalty, with a grip on European politics. As the Medici family solidified its rule over Florence, their influence spread to other parts of Europe. Through strategic marriages, the Medici family became connected to some of Europe's most powerful families. One of the most notable of these connections was the marriage of Catherine de' Medici to Henry II of France, making her Queen of France. Through Catherine's position, the Medici family gained significant political leverage over French and European affairs. This marriage also provided the Medici family with the chance to influence French politics, further expanding their reach beyond Florence. While Florence remained at the heart of their power, the Medici's influence continued to grow across Europe. By the 17th century, the family had become not just a political dynasty, but a cultural powerhouse. The Medici had already funded some of the most famous artists of the Renaissance, including Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and Sandro Botticelli. Their legacy in the art world is still felt today through the masterpieces that were created under their patronage. They funded Michelangelo's David, Botticelli's The Birth of Venus, and Da Vinci's Annunciation. Florence itself became an artistic center that attracted artists and scholars from all over Europe. Yet, the Medici were not just patrons of art and culture, they were also patrons of architecture, and their vision shaped Florence's landscape. The Uffizi Gallery, established by Francesco I de' Medici in 1581, remains one of the world's most important museums, housing the works of the greatest Renaissance artists. The Ponte Vecchio, the Palazzo Medici Riccardi, and the Boboli Gardens are all enduring symbols of the family's contributions to Florence's cultural and architectural heritage. The Medici family understood that their legacy would not only be preserved through their wealth and political power, but also through their lasting impact on the artistic and architectural landscapes. Despite their turbulent history, the sacking of Rome, political exile, and constant challenges to their rule, the Medici family thrived. Their political and cultural resilience made them a central force in European history for centuries. Even as their political power began to wane in the 18th century, the family's artistic legacy and their contributions to European culture remained profound. The Medici family was ultimately absorbed into the Grand Duchy of Tuscany when Francesco III de' Medici died in 1737, marking the end of the Medici dynasty's political rule. But Florence's cultural legacy would continue to thrive in the form of its incredible art, architecture, and intellectual history, much of which had been fostered by the Medici family. The Medici family's journey from bankers to royalty is a testament to their vision, ambition, and strategic genius. Through their wealth, they transformed Florence into the cultural capital of Europe and played a pivotal role in shaping the political and artistic world. Their legacy is not just in the art they funded, but in the way they shaped history through power, politics, and culture. The Medici family proved that sometimes the true rulers of a city are not those who wear crowns, but those who control the flow of money and culture. Their story is one of resilience, creativity, and strategic brilliance, a legacy that will live on forever in the masterpieces they helped create and the city they built into the epicenter of the Renaissance. Their patronage changed not only the fate of Florence but also the course of Western civilization, leaving a mark on art, architecture, and politics that can still be seen today. Even centuries later, their legacy continues to shape the very identity of Florence and the world at large. The Medici family's influence remains a timeless reminder that true power isn't just about ruling with an iron fist sometimes. It's about shaping the world through wealth, culture, and intellect.